Well, hello, and welcome back to that thing we like to call Curlis Mania, where we talk all things pop rock and prog. Tonight, I'm very excited to have, before we do anything else, before we talk about anything, I want to welcome back to the channel Mr. Martin Popoff. How are you, Martin?
Yes, thank you, Tom. Looking forward to this. This is
Oh,
going to be pretty cool. I'm a little nervous. I'll explain why in a second, but we'll go through this. But yeah, it's this is a band I don't get to talk about very much, and I totally love them. But yeah, we'll see how this goes.
yeah, I think we got on this topic because we were saying I was talking to you about your books, and I said that you were saying something about there were some bands I wouldn't mind doing books on. I'm just not sure if it would sell or kind of thing. And I was like, you think you mentioned the Jam in there, and I said, oh my God, the Jam! I love the Jam. And so it was like, oh, we got to do something on the Jam. So that's kind
Yeah,
of how it
it's
came up.
funny. We've been doing these panel books, and for Weimer, well, actually, my U.S. publisher, we just had the new Judas Priest one come out, which is those are hardcover and color throughout. But the ones from Weimer, we've done recently Blue Oyster Cult, Thin Lizzy, Robert Plant, The Cure, Genesis, and I find that when I do a book on a band that nobody really associates me with because it's not from the hard rock heavy metal world, it probably doesn't sell as good because people don't know who I am, so there's no reputation there, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But we've been threatening for 2 or 3 years now to do one on either the Smiths or the Jam or even the Doors. Like those are the ones that are kind of up, and it's like let's. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be worth it, but I would love to do it on the Jam. But maybe this is a
Yeah.
good test run for that.
Well, the Jam, as we can talk about this. I mean, Jam is a UK phenomenon, right? I mean, they're really a British phenomenon. They really didn't make that much dent in the States at the time. Didn't they open for like Blue Oyster Cult or something? And they was
Yes,
people
I
were
saw that.
indifferent. Like
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Like who's this band? Like they come on, let's don't fear the Reaper. Let's go. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you
and
know,
lots of huge singles. And the UK is a very singles oriented market, and lots of singles that didn't show up on the LPs. But it's funny when you look at the actual LP sales. I mean, they're not through the roof, right? There's
right.
a bunch of silvers and a bunch of gold, so a bunch of 60,000, 100,000. So yeah, they have a absolutely great career there, but it's probably economically it's not as massive as sort of the fame quotient of it, right? And then Paul
Right.
Weller goes on to do a million things, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I do think they had a really like kind of rabid cult following in the UK. I mean, they had a really
Yeah.
rabid fan base at the time. But and I think there's reasons for that, which we'll get into. But we are here to rank the albums of the Jam. That's what we're here to do. It's just, we kind of talking about. Let me get to the point here. We're here to rank the albums of the Jam, and it's not that difficult because they have 6 studio records. So we just figured, hey, we can bite this one off because it's 6 albums. We can do this.
Yep.
So
Exactly. Yep.
yeah, yeah. So I like these manageable discographies.
Yeah.
So
Well, so as I was alluding to, my problem with this is I play the Jam all the time and I love the Jam, but what I ended up doing was, I took my entire this what do they call this thing? Direction reaction creation box, right?
yep, yep,
Where it says 5 CD box, 117 digitally remastered tracks, including 22 previous unreleased recordings, 6 B-sides, blah, blah, blah. So I
right.
took this whole thing, burned it into my iPod Classic. And so when I'm walking around or when I was jogging or when I'm in the car, I play so much of the Jam. But in this, the little booklets are just like these kind of like generic booklets that don't line up with the albums, and then all the songs are just in a big conglomeration. So one album leads into the next, and then you've got all those singles. So I've never had a clear demarcation in my mind of where things started and stopped because I wasn't playing these guys a lot in the vinyl era, kind of thing.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, and that's understandable because you know what? Give me 1 second. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Yep.
I also own these records or these box sets, right? So
Yep.
and I'm with you that everything bleeds into each other, right? Everything
Yep.
kind of bleeds into, and it's like the albums bleed into each other. Like you said, they throw the singles into the middle, like the singles that were between the records, they put in the middle of it. So it's kind of
Yes.
difficult,
And then you get this for the booklets, right?
right?
This is one, two, three kind of thing,
You
right?
don't even
So
get the album covers, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yes,
So
yeah,
it gets a little confusing. And
yeah.
the other funny thing is, preparing for this. Sorry, I got to stay on mic with this mic. But preparing for this, I had this thing, right? Absolute Beginners, which is basically all non-LP, right? And this is
Right.
like a Canadian version. I don't even know if this came out in the States, but I've owned this since I was a kid, since
That's
a new
cool.
release,
That's
right?
a great,
This Beat
yeah.
Surrender thing,
Nice.
right? This has like Beat Surrender and Shopping, which they wrote, and then three covers on it.
Yeah.
So like, and I'm like sorting through all this stuff, and then there's this live album, or no, that's the gift, but we've got the live album here as well. And
Yeah.
then I've even got another single, which I for some reason I don't even have the cover for. And it's got like 4 tracks on it. It's like,
The,
man.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a little bit of a confusing catalog because they're doing that thing that the UK loves, and basing their careers on singles in a big way. So there's some fantastic singles all along the
Yeah,
way.
they're not even singles. They're like EPs, like
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah.
5 songs on there. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I actually bought the Style Council one as well. I think it was at the same time. So I
Oh
just
yeah, so I took all those out as
yeah.
well too, because I totally do not like this era or this band, and this is a band I got to learn to try and figure out, right? So I
Yeah.
took out a bunch of my vinyl. I don't know anything about these albums. I just own them all, you know.
Yes. Yes.
You get here. So yeah, I don't know what the point of this band
Yeah.
is, but
It's
and
yeah, he definitely takes a left turn with the Style Council that it becomes a little. I think some people found it tough to swallow some of the stuff because
yeah,
it was the sort of cafe cafe in Paris listening to jazz and smoking cigarettes kind of vibe.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah.
All
So
right, well, let's try do
let's
this.
go. Let's go. All right. So here we go. Let's no time like the present. Let's do this. So I am gonna do. Well, should we do it? Let me just do a really, really quick rundown. So basically, the Jam was a band from 1977 to 82. They had, like Martin just held up. They have one live album called "Dig the New Breed." They have 6 studio albums, which we're going to run down. Basically, they had a very English flavor and a kind of a mod image, very much a UK phenomenon. As I said, by 82, they were #1 on the chart. So it was sort of like this slow rise. And by 1982, when The Gift, that became #1.
Okay.
So formed in Woking, Surrey by Paul Weller and his friends, basically. It's, basically punk, post-punk, new wave, rhythm and blues, and there's a lot of different things thrown in here, which we'll talk about. And that's it. And they were on the Polydor label in the UK. So there you go. There's a quick, very, very quick rundown on the Jam, and I'm going to do my number 6. And my number 6 is going to be "This Is a Modern World."
All right.
Is their second record. And it's I there's a lot of great songs on here. It's funny. I was listening to this for this episode. I was, doing my homework for this, and it's always, I always talk about this. I say this a lot, but it's the albums that you think in your mind, you're thinking, oh, this one's kind of subpar. And then you listen to it and you go, oh my God, I forgot that song was on there and I forgot that one. And there's a lot of really good songs on here as far as, it kind of feels like an echo of In the City. It's kind of the second, it feels like In the City Part 2 was recorded in 1977, the same year as In the City. And you can tell they're pushing him hard and he's probably trying to write songs like crazy and trying to figure it out. And there's a couple of tracks on here that are, like there's a couple of Bruce Foxton songs that are, like London Traffic and Don't Tell Him You're Saying, and kind of It's like, let Paul do the writing, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that being said, there's a couple songs that I love. I love the title track. I love In the Street Today. I love London Girl. I love Standards. Life from a Window is kind of interesting. It's sort of like a very like melodic, sort of mellow song for them, but I like it quite a bit. Yeah, there's quite a Tonight at Noon is another track I like. So it's not that I don't like this record, but I gotta put it somewhere. So there you go, number 6.
Cool. All right.
Yep.
So my number 6 is the debut, In the City, May 2nd, 1977. So as you say, Tom, like they got 2 records out in this year. They got one out in November, which is the one you just talked about. And I've as a kid, this is why I kind of whiffed on the Jam for a couple of years, because this was just way too old sounding for me, and not heavy, and new wave, not post punk. I mean, this is basically kind of a new wave band, and obviously the only band causing the entire mod revival, right? We've talked about, the mod revival is basically the Jam, the Quadrophenia movie, and maybe the Chords, and that's
Yes,
kind of about it. And
pretty
then
much
there's a
it.
bunch of these bands that I don't even like very much, right? But the
Mhm.
Jam completely dominate the whole thing. But this is early for the mod revival because Quadrophenia, the movie, is 79. But yeah, so I find the production very brash and noisy. I don't like, we got the Batman theme on here and Slow Down, right? Taking My Love, it's I just watched a doc on Wilco Johnson the other day, and I just really decided I do not like Dr. Feelgood and Wilco Johnson. And I don't like pub rock either. So yeah, that song is very Wilco Johnson. Um, Art School is kind of like herky jerky bluesy punk. So we've got a band that is kind of like doing the mod thing. They're being a little bit like XTC, I suppose, as well. It's kind of
Yes,
frantic new wave, Elvis Costello, and also they're trying to make that link to the whole Northern Soul and slightly ska thing. Not really, but trying to encapsulate all these things that were part of whatever, ska, two-tone. Well, two-tone, I guess, isn't going yet, but yeah, skinhead, ska, mod, all of that stuff,
pretty
right?
close.
All the
Yeah,
things they're into, right? So that's why you've got things like, yeah, I mean, it's quite garagey, but that is why you've got things like Slow Down on here and even Batman theme. But yeah, I don't know. In the City, I really like on this, but yeah, basically, this sounds like just loud, noisy new wave,
right.
and it just sounded too like kind of old and fuddy duddy for us as kids. So this is why the Jam didn't come into our pantheon of punk bands that we loved at the time in '77.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So In the City is your number six.
Yep.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going. My number five is behind me. It's The Gift.
Yep.
Um, so I enjoy this record, but the one thing that kind of bugs me about it, you got to talk about the things that bother you, right? Because why is it so
Yep.
low? The
Yep.
things that bother me about it are just, it seems like he's trying really hard. Like this album, you can tell he's like sweating, like he's trying hard to like get out of the mold of what the Jam is known for. And you just mentioned he had a lot of different, he had a ton of influences, right? He loved the Beatles and he loved the Small Faces and he loved the Who, but he also loved he loved soul music. He loved Stax. He loved Motown. He loved a lot of black music as well. So he was trying to like, he didn't want to just be known as this sort of white guy who had no soul, So he's trying hard to like bring the Jam to like a different place. And it's not, some of it's like unsuccessful and some of it he's reaching really far and kind of like, whoa, that like, what's the one song that's it's almost like Calypso or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. That is
The
the
Planner's Dream.
just who is the 5 o'clock, or no, not that one. Hang
I
on.
think it's
It's
Planner's Dream goes
yeah,
wrong.
the
Yeah.
planner's dream goes wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Caribbean steel drums, horns, all that
Yes.
stuff in
And
there.
I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, that's a great try, but that's just no, I'm not liking that one too much. But however, there are some bangers on this as well. I love Happy Together. I love Ghosts. I love Precious. And that's Precious is kind of him doing this sort of like sort of soul
Mhm.
kind of thing, or like I don't almost like Philly soul in a way. And then like Town Called Malice it's just an amazing single. I think that was a single. Running on the Spot I like quite a bit. So I do like a lot of this record, but there are times where I feel like he's just overreaching a bit, and it's just like, okay, you're trying to overreach a little, and you're trying so hard to do this different thing that some of it's successful, some of it isn't. So that's why I'm doing The Gift at number five.
Cool. All right. My number five is also The Gift. Sixth and last, March 12th, 1982, recorded at Air London, produced by Peter Wilson. I actually don't like any of these funky songs. So I don't like Precious and I don't like Town Called Malice. I'm okay with Planner's Dream Goes Wrong because it's so sort of catchy. But otherwise, Carnation, kind of a dour ballad. That's pretty cool. I do like Happy Together. Yeah, I just do not like this direction at all for the band with all the horn. I think the production is terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
for bringing in all of these extra instruments and stuff, it's still noisy, but now it's weak and noisy. It's not even powerful sounding. So he's like on his way to the style council at this point, and I just am not into it at all. Just Who Is the 5 o'clock News has that hiccupy snare beat thing, which I hate as well. Don't like Precious. it's like disco funk almost, right? Ghost is pretty cool ballad. So yeah, anything that's remotely jam like on here, I kind of like. Okay, running on the spot's kind of okay as well, but yeah, this one I really don't like. It does rub me the wrong way. So there you go, number 5. The
Yeah.
gift.
Yep. Yeah, that's you brought up something I forgot to mention, and that is you're right. The production seems a little iffy too because they've never had horns and all these other things, and the horns sound really thin and weak. And I'm with you on that. So
Yeah.
that's another point. Um, so yeah, so I'm gonna go number 4 is In the City.
Okay.
There's a thousand things I'd like to say to you. That's a great. I love In the City. I just think that's a great title track. And this album, Martin mentioned it. It feels like they drank about 6 cups of coffee before they recorded it or something, or they were on uppers or something because it's just the whole thing is like you said is just full on. And but that's kind of what I like about it. It's so energetic. It's just like crazy. Like they're just going nuts. And everything is at like double speed. Everything's like, oh my god. Art school. I love Change My Address, baby, 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 I changed my address. Slow down's a good cover. I love Away from the Numbers. So yeah, it sounds from the street. I love non. I mean, see, there's things that you said were annoying you, like not. I like nonstop dancing. I think is great. I love that. But Time for Truth is another. So I really do think this album's strong. I think this is if in the modern world is like the B sides, these are like the A sides for me. So I really enjoy this album. So In the City at number 4.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that album cover, right? It mixes like punk at the top and then full on mod at the bottom, right?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
the Jam looking really punky, right? And In the
Yes.
City, all of that is very punk. And then right at the halfway point, these are super, super clean cut looking guys, right?
Yeah, and they're in some like bathroom or something, right? Like it's bathroom
Yeah,
tile behind.
yeah.
So yeah, and weren't they kind of made fun of because they wore suits at the time? Like there was like, oh, why are you wearing suits or whatever?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't remember, but
Who knows?
yeah, I suppose they're basically teaching the world of reteaching the world about mod at that point.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
they are. Yep.
Okay, so my number 4, I'm going with This Is the Modern World. I pair this album with the first one. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out this whole narrative that apparently this album was really really looked down upon, and they said, oh, the Jam is terrible, they're just blowing all their potential. I mean, I think this was really criticized as a bad album at the time,
It
but
got horrible reviews. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, to me it's just a slight improvement on the debut. It's the same sort of sound, but I like quite a few songs on here. I love This Is the Modern World's good anthemic one. I love Standards, Life from a Window, acoustic, kind of an up tempo pop thing. In the Street Today, punky tribal beat. Again, that's another one that reminds me of. I realized that there's probably 4 to 5 songs across these first 3 albums that remind me of you know white music and go to era
Yeah.
XTC,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Very much so.
So yeah, so they're pretty, they're, like you say, they're hyped up on coffee or something else, right? Or the famous mod pills, the famous
Yeah.
uppers and whatnot,
Purple
right?
pills or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, this is okay. Tonight at Noon's got a little bit of that. It reminds me of like, we got to get out of this place, so I'm not happy about that. And I do not want to hear In the Midnight Hour done by anybody ever again. I hate that song. So they cover that on here. I don't want to hear a cover. The covers are designed to again just cause those more direct links to all that Northern Soul
Yeah.
kind of idea, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
yeah, pretty decent album. But I super pair it with the debut, and I
Yes.
love the album cover. How it reminds me of the second Ramones, Leaves Home, right?
Yes. It very much so. You're
Yeah,
right. It kind of has that vibe for sure.
or Leave Home or whatever it's
Leave
called.
home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So no, and it's great. I do. You're right. The covers. Sometimes the covers, and actually that's a perfect timing because my number 3 is Setting Suns, and
Mhm.
this is another one where like the Heat Wave cover. I'm like, what is that doing on this record?
Yeah.
Like this is my number 3, and I think there's some brilliant songs on this album. But then they do that whole Heat Wave, and it's like Heat Wave. What where like it's almost like a concept record about friends, or like again the whole
Yeah.
cover. They met and they were army buddies or whatever, and they were thick as thieves, and then they ended up falling. After the war or whatever, they kind of went apart, and that there's a lot of songs about friendships and ideals, and And this is a recurring theme for Weller. He comes back to these whole like, we had ideals back in the day. Remember, we were friends and we had these cool dreams, and you sold out to the man. You went and worked, and you had to go pay the bills and get married and have kids. What are you doing, man?
Yeah.
I'm keeping the dream alive. There's a
And
lot of
meanwhile, they're about 21 years old, right?
exactly. These guys are so young, right?
Yeah.
So it's they of course. And he even says later when you watch later interviews with him, he's like, "Yeah, I was really like when I was younger, I was just like I was so, my world was very small and I was very like
Yeah.
zero. What am I trying to say? Is very narrow minded. That's the word. So so anyway, back to this album. I think this album has some amazing tracks on it. And it was reminded again this week of how great. Burning Sky. I mean, the ones that he did for sort of the whatever is sort of a loose concept. The loose concept songs I think are amazing.
Mhm.
Burning Sky, Smithers Jones, Saturday's Kids. Oh, Eaton Rifles. I mean, this album is filled with great songs. A Strange Town. I love Strange Town. Thick as Thieves. Again, I was talking about. I just love that we're no longer as thick as thieves. And we used to. Some about we'd steal everything. We would steal. I just love the
Oh
lyrics.
yeah.
You
How
know,
does that go?
um,
Oh yeah,
we
you
stole
throw
every.
me off of it. I probably could have done it, but yeah,
Oh,
that's I
what
love
we
that song.
stole
Yeah,
everything that we could see.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it wasn't enough. Now we've gone and spoiled everything, and we're no longer as thick as thieves. I just love that. Love the lyrics. And
We're
then
not as thick as we used to be, and all that.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. And
yeah,
everyone can relate to that because everyone's got friends that you thought, man, we were so tight, and then like, what happened? We're not friends anymore. Like we barely
yeah,
know each other anymore. It's
yeah.
kind of where everyone's got that experience. I think that's a great thing. So anyway, and I love how it ends with Wasteland. I just think it's a very, very solid, very strong record. Setting Sun's at number 3.
Okay, all right. Okay, my number three, I'm going with All Mod Cons. And the sort of that cool title is sort of a play on mod, and it's all mod conveniences. And then apparently the album covers a little bit of a joke because they're standing in an empty room, so they don't have any of these mod conveniences, right? So this is November '78. It's exactly a year later than the previous album, and I think they're just advancing. It's got more light and shade. You're starting to feel. You've got the Paul McCartney bass line on "To Be Someone." You've got Mr. Clean, kind of a dark, menacing, experimental track. The cover of David Watts is amazing. The Kinks song on here. So yes, I guess I don't mind them doing covers if it's something I love, right? And I think that's almost one of the highlights on the album, right? English Rose, I like, is a total ballad. I love In the Crowd. Um, Billy Hunt's a little herky jerky. It's a little early XTC there. But Fly with acoustic guitar, that's pretty cool. A Bomb in Wardour Street with the cowbell, big chords, like that's a good rockin' one, right?
Yeah,
Down in the Tube Station at Midnight, I like as well. That's the one with the smells of wormwood scrubs.
yeah,
I just
yeah.
love that line, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's cool, right? So the lyrics are getting amazing. It's getting to be really, really Ray Davies and Kinks and Ray Davies Working Man Cafe kind of later. Ray almost goes more like the Jam later in terms of his lyrics,
Yes, he
more so
kind of
than the early
does.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. So yeah, that's my number three. And my number three, I almost would include this with the first two and call those three a trilogy because I think that the production's sort of the same. It's the same sort of it's still pretty noisy and astringent guitar sounds, like screechy, distorted guitar sounds. I mean, I don't know. I don't have no idea what guitar Paul Weller plays, but it to me it sounds like a Stratty sound, anyways. Right.
Right. Right.
But then the producer also adding a lot of hair on it, right?
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
everything's just kind of noisy on it. So I think this one's almost as noisy as the first two, but we're really starting to see that good variety in the songwriting and pacing.
Yeah, the writing is really getting refined at this point,
Yeah,
and that leads into my number 2. So All Mod Cons is my number 2, and
yeah,
I'm just going to continue what you're saying. It's funny because we're complaining about the covers, and then you're right. David Watts is just so good. I mean, I like this version better than the Kinks version.
yeah, yeah,
It's like when I listen to David Watts, I want to hear the Jam version because it's just so good. It's just the way they
yeah.
they kill it. And Almod Khan, and I think he was playing mostly a Rickenbacker 330 through a Vox. I think that was,
Okay.
I mean, that was the early jam sound. He kind of changed at some point, but he most of the time he was playing a Rickenbacker. But anyway, but like you said, I'm sure at post production they were probably compressing it and doing all these things to it, so it's a little
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, I
But
mean, let's pay tribute definitely to Bruce Foxton's bass sound as well, and the bass
oh
weaves and
yeah,
the Paul McCartney ness of it, and the trio ness of this band, right? I mean, you're
yeah.
just hearing everything. The drums, super catchy, Rick Buckler, drum beats all over the place. So yeah, it's just it's a really nice arrangement between those three sets of instruments in this band.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that's a great, I'm glad we brought that up because we've been talking about Weller a lot, obviously, but like
Mhm.
Rick Buckler and Bruce Foxton were an amazing rhythm section too, as Martin just said. It's just they're very flexible. It's like almost like a flexible rhythm section where they seem like they can stop on a dime. They can, and like you said, I love Bruce's playing. It's just so, like you said, very McCartney-esque at times and kind of bouncy. It's bounces all over the place. And it just the bass every time I listen to these records, you go, oh yeah, listen to that bass line is so cool. I mean, and but so things like David Watts, where he's ding 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 ding, and
Yeah.
they're very tight. Um,
And
uh,
it's aggressive too, with that Chris Squire sort of thing going on, right?
yes,
It's got some hair on
yes.
it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, to be someone, we had a wonderful. Didn't we have a wonderful? What is it? Didn't we have a nice time?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Heavy, chords at that point. Yeah. It really
Yeah,
picks up. Yep.
yeah, I love that. And I love the lyrics are kind of like it seems like somebody hanging around a rock star, and they're gonna hang around them as long as they're famous, and then as soon as they're not famous anymore, well, I'm out, kind of thing. It
Yeah.
was fun while it lasted, kind of thing. Mr. Clean, like you said, is a cool track. I love that sort of mellow track. It's cool. In the Crowd, I love In the Crowd. Oh my God, what a great track that is. Billy Hunt, like you said, is kind of it's interesting. Billy Hunt, Billy Hunt, Billy, Billy, Billy. I mean, it's kind of it's sort of catchy, but
Impossible to remember that, or I mean, forget that, right? I mean, that's going through your head as soon as you see that title every time. And a lot of these titles don't go through your head. That was another problem I was a little nervous about, right? Especially on the early albums, like the titles are not so in your face, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but to your point, I mean, you mentioned a lot of the songs, but I have to go with A Bomb and Wardour Street. That whole A Bomb, A Bomb, A. I mean, I love that track. That is so aggressive and so well done. And actually, when I was in London, I walked down Wardour Street, and I was like, I took a picture of the street sign, and it, of course, I
Nice.
captioned it A Bomb.
Yeah.
So, and then down in the tube station at midnight. I mean, come on, that's another classic jam track. And you're right. I love you hear the subway sounds in the track, and you can almost picture yourself like it's late at night. You're in the subway, right? And this has happened to me, where in New York City, where you're late at night, and you're kind of by yourself, and you look around, you're like, oh no, this guy's look sketch over there, and
Yeah.
like they could easily like beat me up and take my money, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
kind of feels like that kind of scenario. And what doesn't he say something like I'm on my way home to my wife, something like
I
that.
can't remember, but I'm remembering the bass line, the doom, 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 doom,
Yes,
the bass lines are amazing in
they
this
are
band, right? Yeah.
unreal. Unreal.
Yeah.
So good. So good. So anyway, yes, I love those last two tracks. I love to death. Love them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my number two. All my
Cool.
Yep.
That's your two. Okay. So my two is sound effects.
Okay.
So we are now up to the second to last album, right?
Yep.
And yeah, I absolutely love this album. I mean, these are now my final two are two of my favorite albums of all time. But yeah, wow, Pretty Green, dun, 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 man, yeah, again, the bass on that is amazing. And well, yeah, look at that. So the tracks are see, that's the other thing. A lot of these albums have different tracks in the different territories, even too, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that's entertainment as well, with the acoustic and all that, such a kind of like a campfire, sing along song. Man in the Corner Shop, rainy, REM-ish almost kind of thing,
Yeah.
with the galloping little part in there, which is really cool as well. Scrape Away, kind of a dark, thorny Gang of Four kind of thing going on in that one.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but I'm Different Now is hard rocking, and again that makes me think of something like Towers of London from XTC.
Hmm.
Monday, real sort of depressing and dour. Yeah, this is just a really cool album. Set the House Ablaze. You know, that's the one with them whistling, kind of like a pre-U2 sort of thing
Da,
going on
da,
there.
da, 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 da,
Yeah.
da. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool too. Start very Who again with that bass line. So that's a cool one as well. So yeah, a lot of variety. It's a good tough album. There's really none of that. You're not feeling that that R&B or funk thing really here yet. It's just dug right into the good gnarly who-ness sort of thing. So yeah, there you go. Sound effects.
Yes, there you go. That's your number two. That's my number one, right? So obviously that's the only thing I got left is sound effects. And
Yep.
I got to echo everything Martin just said. It's a fantastic album. I just love the influences and like you said, it's tough. I mean, and you do forget how tough this record is when you listen to it. You go, wow, this album's really like coming at you. It is not, there's this, it's very relentless. And like you said, it starts out with that ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
And then they do Start, which is basically Taxman. I mean, I can't believe they got away with that, right? I mean, it's essentially Taxman bass line.
Yeah.
But you know, I guess they made it different enough that they didn't get in trouble. But I love Start. I think it's amazing. Pretty Green, what a great pretty. We just talked about that. But you know, you mentioned all the tracks. Set the House Ablaze. I mean, and I love that he was influenced by. You mentioned Gang of Four. He said he was influenced by Entertainment, by Gang of Four, and what's the second record?
Solid Gold.
Solid Gold, yes. I think that might have been out at the time. I'm not sure, but he said something about Andy Gill's guitar sound he was very influenced by, and he kind of you can feel it, like you said, on certain songs like Scrape Away, and there's just it's there. There's that vibe is there, and I love it. I just think that this is where to me this is the quintessential jam. Like when I go to pull out a jam record, it's almost always sound effects because I just love so many tracks on this album.
Mhm.
And I think to your point, they kind of this is like their sweet spot before they start overreaching. That's my opinion. So this is just a phenomenal album. I love this record. Love it. Number one, sound effects.
Cool. All right. My number one, I'm going with Setting Suns. And again, I'm being thrown off. I've got my wiki open here. I'm looking at the track listing, and then I'm looking at mine. I mean, these Canadian ones are screwy, man. The tracks are
Yeah.
all over the
Are
place.
they? Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's like it's showing that it's totally. It says right on Wiki, Polydor Canada edition, and it's all mixed around.
Wow.
And I think I had in my notes here where I sorted this all out. Oh yeah, here we go. Canada adds Strangetown and the Butterfly Collector. So it's 12 tracks, neither of which are on the UK, which is 10 tracks. And the US edition was 11 tracks, leaving off the Butterfly Collector. So mine's 12. So
Okay.
all three are different. But yeah, I mean, my favorite jam songs are on here. Girl on the Phone,
Yes.
you know, and the
Yes.
phone ringing and all that. Love it.
Yes.
Love Thick as Thieves. That's absolutely one of my favorite songs by them. Smithers Jones. So on the album, this is written by Bruce. On the album, you get the strings version of this song, but there's a singles version, which is just a total rock track. So there's two
Yes.
versions of Smithers Jones. I love it to death. I love Eating Rifles. I
Yeah.
hate Heat Wave. I can't stand having
Right.
heat. Saturdays, kids live in council houses. Baggy shirts are
Baggy
trousers. Yeah, love it, love it. I mean, the lyrics are just incredible over this album. So you know, maybe to me, this album kind of stands on its own. Because I think you and I have kind of framed sound effects as you know, and or now that I think of it and some of the adjectives you were using, I mean, it does seem a little tougher, a little more chaotic, a little more unraveled. To me, maybe this is the most considered and ambitious, and the
Right.
fact of the matter of having that beautiful idea of how a bunch of these songs line up to that, you know, storyline thing. But
Right.
yeah, these songs are just so cool. Burning Sky is really kind of tough on this record as well. Yeah, Eating Rifles was a single, which is kind of a weird choice because it is kind of dark and loud and rhythmic sort of thing. It just doesn't seem to be the one. I think this album maybe has the best bass lines on it, but I think this is also the most melodic of the albums too.
Hmm.
I think it might be the poppiest with the strongest chord changes. But yeah, love all these songs. Yeah, Butterfly Collector. Yeah, so Butterfly Collector's not on the UK, and that's kind of like a cool, mellow, weird one, right? But
Yes. Yes.
yeah, Private Hell is also kind of dark. Actually, it's quite dark. Yeah, definitely kind of depressing chord changes on that. So I mean, yeah, I guess this album's pretty tough as well. But yeah, I think basically Thick as Thieves and Girl on the Phone are probably my two favorite jam songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Girl on the
yeah,
phone is great.
yeah,
Yes, and she knows everything about me, everything I ever did,
yeah.
and he's like kind of freaked out by it. Yeah, so and she said we met a long time ago, but I don't remember, but she should know, kind of or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
I think, again, his lyric writing is just phenomenal.
yeah,
So
yeah, for sure.
but what do you think about? So you mentioned Butterfly Collector. Now the first time that I heard Butterfly Collector was on a CD of like it was called Extras, I think.
Right.
And I'd never heard that song before. And it was a bunch of stuff that I had never heard was on that CD. I should have grabbed it. I haven't saw.
Yeah, I do love it. I mean, I'm a little sketchy on. Okay, so Liza Radley is a good
Yes,
non-LP track, right?
yes,
A
yes.
beautiful, beautiful, cool, mellow, almost prosaic sort of song. And then Absolute Beginners, I think, is possibly in my top three jam songs. And to me, Absolute Beginners, that song, even though they've got the horns going in there, I've
Right.
always put that together with Paper Late from Genesis, right?
Yes,
It
yes.
reminds me of that. And the fact of the matter is, kind of got the same storyline. It's this cool, ambitious song that's not on an actual LP, but
Right.
it's a hit, right? And
It's a
Paper
hit.
Late was on 3 by 3, and then it was
That's
on
right. Yeah.
Three Sides Live, right? And it was all over the radio. So Absolute Beginners really has that amazing, cool, funky. I generally don't like horns, but I like when there's a really neat weave going on between the guitar line and horns. I think Paper Late and this both do this. So this goes dun dun
Yes, that's right.
so the
Yeah.
guitar's talking back and forth to the horns. I think it's a masterpiece. And
Right.
like I say, I think it's one of my favorite. When You're Young is really cool. Funeral Pie, Tales from the Riverbank is a cool, spooky non-LP
Yes.
one.
Tales from the
Hidden
Riverbank. I
Heroes.
love the Tales from Riverbank.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And then when we get to the end of the career, I'm not crazy about the song Beat Surrender. I guess that's maybe kind of the last song they wrote, sort of thing.
See, that's where we differ. I like Beat Surrender quite a bit.
Right.
But
And then Shopping is, I guess, one they wrote. And then, like I say, it's got these three covers on it as well. So
and you kind of wonder, Martin, are those tracks like Beat Surrender and Shopping and Move On Up and all these poor Alfie and all this stuff? Oh, Bitterest Pill. They sound like the Gift sessions. I mean, I wonder if those are Gift outtakes.
yeah, because it is at the end. So
I wonder.
again, I think
I
we're on
wonder.
our way to the Style Council at that point, kind of thing.
Yeah, 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 for
Yeah,
sure. They sound like style. Those songs, those outtakes are sounding more and more like Style Council.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
with the Jam playing it. Essentially.
It's so funny though, as kids, I slowly started getting into the jam. So by maybe 79, 80, 81, I was kind of well into the jam. But you looked up to these guys. They're in suits. These lyrics sound really wise and wistful and stuff. It seems like these guys are like grown up, super mature guys, and they're just like a couple of years older than you at that point, right? It's all I almost don't want to think about how young they were, right? It
Yeah.
takes away from the experience, but it just seems like he was just like this wise second coming of Ray Davies kind of thing, right?
Yeah, he kind of was though. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, the songs that he wrote at that age is unbelievable. I mean, they
yeah,
because you're to your point, you listen to these lyrics now and they still sound good, and you just
yeah,
say, wow, he wrote those at 22 or 23, or however old he was. I mean, that's a very young age to be writing
yeah.
that, like you said, Saturday's Kids, and I mean, down in the tube state, like you said, it kind of sounds like a second version of Ray Davies, essentially, where
Yeah.
he's
And
thinking
if you're
about,
an Anglophile, you love this stuff, right? If you love
yeah,
if you love the scooters and the mods and the jackets and all that stuff, and,
yeah,
and you're hearing council houses and wormwood scrubs and all this UK stuff that you don't normally. So it's like you're right in that culture of the skinheads and the mods and the rockers and the punks and the post punks or whatnot, right? It's just really cool that they did this. And I wish the mod revival was more productive. I like the chords, but
Yeah.
I don't like most of those other bands that were involved in that, and there just weren't that many of them, right?
No,
So
no.
I'm now trying to get into this stuff because my latest audio podcast episode was called what did I call it? Am I too much of a punk snob for hardcore? Because I've been trying to get into hardcore, right?
Right, right.
And it's like I'm such an Anglophile that no, forget LA, forget the New York
Like
scene.
Bad
I'm
Brains.
not ready for that. Yeah, forget Washington. It's like got
Yeah.
to come from the UK. Forget anything newer than 1982 and all this.
Right.
Because I've read a lot of books and I love watching these docs on all these youth culture movements and stuff from there. So it's like I'm such a punk snob, and by that I mean 1977 punk, right? It's got to come
Yes.
out in
Yes.
1977 or not, or
Yep.
it doesn't matter, right? It's like
Right.
too late for everything else. And
Right.
UK Subs is kind of a connector band to those. But so I do like I have been getting quite into lately Cockney Rejects and Crass. I love Crass. That's a whole nother story, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yep. Well,
but and GBH and those kinds of bands. But yeah, I just love these cultures and well, yeah, that's what I was getting at. So I'm also trying to get into the whole ska thing a little more because I always rejected
mhm.
English beat the specials and stuff. I love Madness, but I like later Madness even more than earlier Madness, right?
There you go. Right. Right.
So I'm trying to get more into these things, but
Trying to accept. Trying to accept. I'm trying to be accepting.
I know.
Yeah.
But the mod thing was pretty easy, and or the original mod thing, and just the whole mod aesthetic, and then like I say, one or two bands from the mod revival. So
Yeah, no, and I do remember like, okay, I'm just gonna this is a sidetrack, but I you mentioned hardcore, and I do remember there was like one guy in school there's always like that one guy who you're like, wow, what bands are you listening to? He was into like he was into hardcore. And it was all like Bad Brains, Henry Rollins, Black Flag, Dead Kennedys, all of those sort of like I guess it's mostly American, right?
right,
American hardcore and I was like, and Minutemen and bands like that. And I was kind of intrigued. I was like, I'm not sure if I like the music, but I'm sort of intrigued by this. It's
yeah.
one of those. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's the other thing that got us down this route because on Facebook I've been talking back and forth with Monty Connor because we love Sham 69, Borstal Breakout, and the Sham 69's got some amazing songs that lead to this hardcore thing, right? And they got
Right.
in a lot of trouble for this because there were fights all the time, and because they're arriving late, but they had If the Kids Are United and Borstal Breakout and Hurry Up Harry, like these
Yeah.
amazing UK Paul Weller type songs, right?
Right. Right.
Um,
Yes.
so yeah, so that's really what I'm kind of gonna I think spend a lot of my listening time on now is that 79 to 82 UK scene.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, you can't lose. So yeah. And one last thing I wanted to mention. This is it. Last mention. Last thought before I forget, and that is they opened for the Clash, right? Didn't they? When the Jam first started, they opened for the Clash, and then
Okay.
by the time of the Gift, mentioned they were number one and they were everywhere. They were on top of the pops. They were number one on the charts. They were huge. In fact, they arguably bigger than the Clash by that point. And
Yeah.
I think Joe Strummer was saying things like, the Jam. They're like, come on, people really like the Jam that much. It was just
Yeah.
funny how like I think he was a little bit like, come on, these guys were opening for us in 76 or 77 or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's funny.
Well, it's the same kind of journey. I mean, it's a slower advancement or evolution than the Clash. The Clash advanced rapidly through so many things, right?
Right. Right.
You think of the debut into the more riffier, longer songs of "Give 'Em Enough Rope," and then you get "London Calling," which is your Bruce Springsteen, "The River," almost like your
Yeah.
U2 "Rattle and Hum," all of Americana thing, and then they do it again on a triple, and then they radically change, and it's dub and early hip hop, and then Cut the Crap is weird too as well, and they lose mix. So they're moving super
Super
fast.
fast.
But
Yeah.
Paul Weller, picks up speed, I guess, starting at Sound Effects, and now he's going to move fast.
Right. Yes.
The other guys into Style Council, and then this long prolific solo career where there's all kinds of music in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And to think about another thing that hit me while I was getting ready for this is like, man, two albums in 77, 78, 79.
Yeah.
80, 82. I mean, it's just like they were making albums like every year. It was like cranking out records. It was just nonstop.
And a lot of singles in between, right?
Singles, exactly. They're
Yeah.
forgetting we talked about a lot of
Yeah.
singles that were not even on albums. So it's like, and they were touring constantly. So it's like these guys were busy, man. They were, it never stopped. So anyway, but yeah, the Jam was there's no question. I love the Jam. I love Paul Well. I'm a big Paul Weller fan. I quick story and then we'll be done. That
Mhm.
is that I did see him in Chicago when I wasn't that familiar with his solo stuff. I'd heard of him. I'd heard of the Jam. But I became a stone cold fan after I saw him in Chicago at the Metro. And he
Mm.
was, I think it was the Wildwood tour. It was like 93, I think.
Okay.
And I had just gotten to Chicago and I saw him live and he blew me away. I mean,
Mm.
I was, it was my favorite, one of my favorite concerts of all time. He played
Wow.
the Metro like it was like the Pontiac Silverdome. I mean, he was playing it like it was a stadium and he was just going all out. And I was like, okay, after it was
Yeah.
one of those concerts you walk out and you go, okay, now I'm a huge fan. I've got to buy everything. It was one of those. It was one of those.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's
So,
really cool. Yeah.
yeah.
Wicked.
Yeah. He was great. So,
Wow.
but anyway, that's it. Do you have anything more to say, Martin? Are you
Nope.
all right?
That's good. I think we covered it.
I think we did it. We did it. There's not much else to say. So thanks everybody for sticking around. If you're with us this long, we appreciate it. Go listen to some Jam. Go check it out. Go pull out your records, pull out your CDs, go listen to some of it because it's great stuff. And please, of course, give it a like if you like what you see. And please subscribe to the channel. We have to say that. And Martin, thanks again for joining me. It was really fun.
Absolutely. Very cool.
Enjoyed it. Yep. So thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time on Curless Mania. See ya.